All right. So in this video, what we're going to do is look at and talk about the basic way that coins worked in the Roman imperial period. So we'll do another video that talks about coins in the Roman Republic. That's a different story. But in a sense, what we are going to cover in this video is the period from the reign of Augustus, more or less, through the reign of Justinian. And that's going to take us over about a 600-year span, starting really with the sort of 30s BC and ending really with the 560s AD. So when we're talking about coins of the Roman Empire, what exactly are we talking about? Well, the first phase is a set of reforms that the Emperor Augustus makes soon after taking power in the first century BC. So this is a exhibit that I think is really super interesting that comes from the Archaeological Museum in Trier in Germany. And it gives you a sense of how these Roman coins effectively add up to each other. So at the upper left, in its little container by itself, this is an aureus. It's a gold coin. The aurei are something that really start being issued in the late phases of the Republic by Julius Caesar in particular. But for the most part, these become a staple of high value currency transactions under the emperors. And so the Aureus is the highest value coin that you're ever going to really see in any kind of widespread circulation. The next coin in value and the next coin in expense is the denarius. So if you look just to the right of the Aureus, you see a silver coin. And that silver coin is the Roman denarius. The denarius is a silver coin that equals, well, 25 denarii equal an aureus. And so what you see is the aureus is actually much more valuable than the denarius, but it's also very distinct from the denarius. So the denarius obviously is a different metal. It's a different size. It looks and feels differently. The next coin in value in this Roman system set up by Augustus is the sestertius. And if the denarius is effectively the dollar in the Roman currency system, the sestertius is a quarter. There are 4 sestertii to the denarius. And the sestertii really are the workhorse coin of the Roman system. They're big bronze coins. They're very nicely made, and they're very durable. Below the sestertius, you see there's actually a pile of 2 coins. So one of them is a dupondius, the other is an os. The dupondius is half a sestertius, so you can see there's 2 dupondii beneath the sestertius. There's also 4 osses, because an os is half a dupondius. And then the coin that you see on the upper register to the right is an os. And below it, you see there is a stack of 2 coins. Those are semises, and then below my picture is a set of coins that are called quadrans. Quadrans are 4 to the os, and semises are half an os, so there's 2 to the os. So this is kind of what the system looks like in practice. These are the set of denominations. So the smallest denomination, which is kind of equivalent to a US penny, is a quadrans. And then 2 of those equal a semis, 2 semis to an os, 2 os to a dupondius, 2 dupondii to a sestertius, 2 sestertii to a quinarius. And we didn't show you a quinarius, but that's half a denarius. And then there's 2 quinarii to a denarius and 25 denarii to an aureus. Now there's an element of this system that has to be explained. When you look all the way back at the very beginning of the Roman Republic, Roman Republican money was not based on denarii, it was based on the os. So the very earliest Roman coins are these gigantic bronze coins that are osses. The os remains the nominal sort of baseline for Roman coins. So the denarius literally means 10 osses. So when you have half a denarius, it's actually 5 osses. That's the quinarius. So the denarius is 10 osses. The quinarius is 5 osses from the Roman word for 5. And then the os is this sort of almost like a fossil of this old Roman system where the monetary system was based not on silver, but on bronze. Okay, so let's look at the first of these denominations. This is a quadrant, and you can see from the measurement of this coin, it's quite small. It's, more or less the size of, kind of like a penny in the US system. It's noticeably small. You handle this coin, it's a low value coin. The other thing that you recognize with this immediately is it has a rhinoceros on the front, and rhinos are cool. So this is part of why I love this coin. The other thing, it's from the reign of Domitian, and we'll spend a lot of time in these videos looking at coins from the reign of Domitian. In part because I think Domitian is really cool and underrated, but in part also because Domitian does a really, really good job of differentiating his coins and differentiating the dating of his coins. And so it's one of the easiest sets of coin issues to understand and to place in chronological order. We know this is Domitian because if you look at the back of the coin, you see it says IMP, DOMIT, AUG, GERM. So IMP, Imperator, DOMIT, Domitianus, AUG, Augustus, GERM, Germanicus. This means he won a victory over the Germans. The other thing that you can see about this is really it's not super impressive. It's small. There is no imperial portrait on it. But the fact that it is issued by the Senate is something that's also indicated. The SC that you see in the middle of the back of the coin indicates that this is a senatorial issue. And that's something that you see frequently on bronze coins issued in this Roman imperial period. The Senate still retains the capacity, at least in theory, to issue these bronze coins. This isn't something you see on the silver or gold coins in this period. Value. So we move to the next coin, and here I actually don't have a semis of Domitian, I have one of Hadrian, but you can see that this coin is more or less twice the size of the quinarius, because it's twice the value of a quinarius, right? So a semis is 4.6 grams, 19 millimeters. The quinarius is about half that in weight. So again, if you're holding a semis and a quinarius, you can tell the difference. They feel different, and so you can tell that the semis is a higher value coin. There's also another important difference here. You have a picture of the emperor on the front. So this comes from the reign of Hadrian, and you see a portrait of Hadrian. And then if you read closely, you can see the legend is Hadrianus, that's on the left, and Augustus PP, that's on the right. And then on the back, you just see a dating symbol that means his third consulship with an image of military standards. And so you can tell based on the weight of the coin, but also the appearance of the coin, that this is a higher value thing than the quadrants. Okay, so now we move up to the next value. This is the os, and we're back with Domitian, and we'll stay with Domitian for a little while. You can see this is a much more substantial coin. So it is, again, more or less a little more than twice the size, twice the weight of an os, but it's also bigger. And so twice the weight of a semis. So you hold this in your hand and you know that this is a more valuable, more substantial coin. You can also see that the portrait is much more defined. It's raised a little bit. One of the things I love about Domitianic portraits is you can actually see the neck vein. You can see like the muscle in his neck. And then it is bearing the legend or bearing the words that describe the Emperor Domitian. So again, you see in there IMP, CAES, Imperator, Caesar, Domit, and then Aug, and then a bunch of other titles on there. And then on the back, you have an image that says SC, which indicates that this is a senatorially authorized coin. So the os then is, again, very physically distinctive from the smaller denomination coins. When you get to a dupondius, you're in a bit of a different situation. So a dupondius is, in fact, bigger than an os, but it's actually a lot more difficult to distinguish a dupondius from an os just based on the feel and the weight of the coin. It isn't noticeable in the way that the semis to the os is noticeable, or the quadrants to the semis is noticeable. The way that you can tell a dupondius from an os is the crown that's on the emperor's head. So you can see on Domitian's head, you see that this crown is a radiate crown, meaning it has these spikes on it. And that differs from the laurel crown that you saw on the os. Then the dupondius then is something that when it's worn down quite a bit, you can't actually see the picture on the front very clearly. It's hard to tell which denomination this coin actually has. When you get to the sestertius, there is no question. This is a big, thick, heavy, durable coin. And also, in the time of Domitian, this is made of something that's called orichalcum. It's a combination of bronze and zinc. And so the color of the metal is also somewhat different. You can see it's a brighter kind of brassy color. But also when you hold a sestertius, you know that this is something that's substantial. These coins are meant to last. And so if you were to hold a sestertius in your hand, you would not mistake it for an as. You would not mistake it for a dupandius. You definitely wouldn't mistake it for a semes or a quadrant. It's big and solid. And it is generally very well minted because these coins circulate for a long time. We have examples of sestertii circulating, in the 270s that were issued almost 150 years before, because they are just so big and sturdy that they can take long-term circulation and long-term use. When we get out of the sestertii, we are now in the silver coins. And so again, very distinctive when you're moving from a sestertius to a denarius. The denarius that you see here is again a Domitianic coin. It is 18 millimeters, it's 3.2 grams, and it is basically under Domitian 90 to 96% pure silver. And so this is something that is visibly different and much more high value than the bronze coinage we've looked at before. Again, if you're holding these coins in your hand, you are not going to mistake a denarius for something else, because you can see physically that it is different and that it is, noticeably different. So even though in terms of its weight, this actually weighs somewhere between a quadrans and a semes, you're not going to mistake it for a semes or a quadrans. It's worth too much, but also obviously it's a different metal, so it will feel different and look different when you're holding it. And then you get to the Aureus. So this is not an Aureus of Domitian, but it is an Aureus. This is the gold coin, and you can see again, it's a different thing. You're not going to confuse an Aureus for any of these other things. It's 7.5 grams. It's about 20 millimeters. So, about the size, kind of about the size of a nickel, more or less, in the United States. But it's gold. And it is nearly pure gold. So it has a gold color. You are not mistaking this, especially because it's so high value, for anything of the other coins. So let's go back to our size comparison. This just gives you a sense of if you were looking at these things on a table, which you are here, you can see you might have trouble distinguishing between the as on the far right and the dupandius right next to it, but you're not going to have any trouble seeing the difference between those and a sestertius. And you're not going to have any trouble seeing the difference between a denarius or a gold coin and any of these bronze coins. So this system that's put in place by Augustus works more or less without significant alteration until you get into the 3rd century. But by the time you get into the 3rd century, there are a few changes that have taken place. First, the system under Augustus is a system in which the value of these coins is to a degree determined by the value of the precious metal in those coins. So the denarius is about, under Augustus, 3.5 to 4 grams of pure silver, more or less. The Aureus is 7.5 grams or so in the time of Domitian, of more or less pure gold. And then the bronze coinage, it's bronze, so it doesn't have an intrinsic value in the way that the silver or the gold does. But as you go through the 2nd century, we begin to see a debasement of the silver and gold coins, and especially the silver coin. So the silver coin that under Domitian is more than 90% pure, by the time that Septimius Severus, who's emperor in the year 200 AD, is in power, it's down to about 50% pure. But the interesting thing that we see is the coin's value more or less holds, despite the fact that the precious metal content is decreasing so significantly. And the reason that happens is in part because the Roman system has become something that people are so accustomed to, that the money now has a value that is somewhat intrinsic, but also somewhat notional. So intrinsic value means it's silver, and therefore it's valuable because silver itself has value. But notional value means it's a denarius, and you recognize that a denarius has value. And so as the silver content of the denarius decreases, the intrinsic value of the denarius also decreases, but the notional value of it doesn't increase significantly. There is still a recognition that more or less 25 denarii buy an Aureus, even if the silver content and the gold content of the Aureus and the denarius are varied, you still more or less can agree that if you have a certain number of bronze coins, it can buy you this many silver coins. If you have a certain number of silver coins, it can buy you this many gold coins, because there is a notional value within that system. But as you get to the reign of Caracalla, this is and this is Septimius Severus's son. And so after about 212, with Caracalla, you have a different structure that's created. Because what Caracalla is interested in doing is creating a silver coin that exists somewhere in between the denarius and the aureus. He creates something that numismatists and historians have called the Antoninianus, after his real name, which was Antoninus. And so you see on this coin, you see the name on this coin is Antoninus Pius Aug Germ. So another German victory. So it's Antoninus Pius Augustus Germanicus. And so the coin that he creates is called the Antoninianus after him, Antoninus. We call him Caracalla because, frankly, we have other people named Antoninus who are much more closely associated with that name. But what Caracalla was doing here is, in a sense, playing with the sliding scale between the intrinsic and the notional value of these coins. The silver coin that Caracalla has is, of course, now 50% as pure as a regular denarius from 110 or 120 years before. What Caracalla then decides to do is create effectively a double denarius. And that's what the Antoninianus is. It's a double denarius. And so you see here with the double denarius, he does the same thing that the Dupondius does to differentiate it from an os. Caracalla here has the radiate crown with the spikes. And this is something that communicates to people that this is a coin that is worth 2 denarii. But it's also something where the silver content in the double denarius of Caracalla is basically the same silver content as in the single denarius of Domitian. And so what Caracalla is doing here is playing a bit of a game. So you have here more or less, 3 grams of silver in this coin that you're now pricing at the equivalent of 2 denarii, which 100 years ago would contain 3 grams of silver, just like this coin. This doesn't fuel widespread inflation because, again, Romans understand how this coin fits into their monetary system. But something that happens later in the 3rd century does basically break this system that Augustus had created and that had prevailed for, the better part of almost 300 years. This is because the silver content in the silver coins in the Roman state decreases dramatically in the 240s and 250s. So Caracalla creates the double denarius, or the Antoninianus, in 212. By the 240s, this is a pretty standard issue. You see far more Antoninianae than you see denarii. Denarii are actually pretty rare in the 240s and exceptionally rare by the 250s. Instead, these Antoninianae are issued regularly. But what you can see is the amount of silver drops radically in the Antoninianus between the middle part of the 240s and the middle part of the 250s. So on the left, you see a coin issued by Philip the Arab around 244 AD. And its silver content is in the 30% range. But you can see it looks silver, right? This is an alloy, but it's an alloy with enough silver that, if you don't break it down and melt it down, you can recognize that this is a silver coin. So here, the notional value of the coin is much more important than the intrinsic value. But as you move into the 250s, what you see is less and less silver is going into this alloy. So this coin number 2, the coin in the middle, this is issued by the Emperor Decius around 250 or 251 AD. You can see here that the alloy now has so little silver that it barely looks silver. It's much more of a kind of bronzy, silvery mixture. You still could conceivably identify this as a silver-ish coin, but you would not see any intrinsic value in the silver in it because the percentage is too low. The coins under Decius, I think, are well below 10%. Silver. Now, on the right, you see a coin from 5 years later. This is issued by the Emperor Gallienus, and this is a coin where the silver percentage is so low that it is no longer a silver alloy. Instead, you have basically a bronze coin that's dipped in silver. And so if you look at that coin, what you can see is this is a bronze coin, but you can still see flecks of silver on the face and in this sort of the low points around the crown. And that's because as this coin circulated, the silver wore off. But this creates a problem because now a coin that's supposed to be silver isn't silver at all. The coins of Gallienus are at most like 2 to 3% silver. So in the 270s, there's an attempt to reform the coinage and create a new system that can in some ways perhaps make coins work better in a way that preserves their value. And this is done by the Emperor Aurelian. So between about 272 and 275, Aurelian institutes a reform of the coinage in which he creates a new coin. This is called by some people an Aurelianus, though we don't actually know that it was called that in antiquity. And you can see on the front of this coin, there's a portrait of Aurelian and his name, IMP, Imperator, Aurelianus, Aug. On the reverse, you see Rome and a soldier sort of exchanging a globe, and it says Restitutor exerciti, the restorer of the armies. But below that is something that's quite interesting. You have an XXI. So XX is the Roman numeral 20, I is the Roman numeral 1. This is a value marker. So what Aurelian does is he issues a new coin, just like Caracalla had done. But where Caracalla issues a new coin that works within the understood system of valuations of coins, what Aurelian does is he creates a completely new set of valuations. So this is a coin that's worth 20 denarii. That's what the XXI means. It means 20 to 1. It's a new value marker, and it's something that does not work with Romans' understanding of how their monetary system works. And so Aurelian's introduction of this coin actually sparks hyperinflation. And so between the 270s and the 290s, we see prices take off. And this is because now Romans not only don't trust that there's an intrinsic value to their silver coins, which again have at most 5% silver. So there's very little actual value to these coins. But they also don't trust that there's any notional value either. The monetary system of Augustus that everybody was accustomed to is totally thrown out of whack by Aurelian's introduction of a coin that equals 20 denarii. There's just no place for that in the Augustan system, unless, of course, it was a gold coin, and this isn't. This is effectively a bronze coin. So in 294, the Emperor Diocletian institutes a new type of currency reform. And this is a reform that's based on, again, a sort of threefold monetary arrangement, where you have a gold coin, the aureus, you have a silver coin called an argenteus, and you see that represented on the bottom part of the slide. And then you have two bronze coins that represent the lower value coinage that's being issued. Now, the system of Diocletian, it rests very heavily on those two bronze coins, the follises. So in this picture, what you can see on the top is a Diocletianic era coin that's done according to this standard of Aurelian. And you can see at the bottom of it, you see that same XXI. Next to it is a gamma, which indicates what part of the mint it was issued. So this again, at the beginning of the reign of Diocletian, starts out as a coin that's tariffed at 20 to 1, 20 denarii to 1. But with the reform in the 290s, what Diocletian has done is created a new model where there's new bronze coinage. And the coin that he's depending most heavily on is that big coin on the lower right of each of those pictures. That's the follis. So the follis is a large bronze coin. It's kind of in a way equivalent to the sestertius, but what Diocletian decides to do is augment the value of the follis by giving it a silver coating. And then the half follis also has a silver coating, but again, it's not as significant a silver coating as the follis, and it's not as large a coin as the follis. For this system to work, people will have to accept that the progression from gold to silver to the follis is something that they will accept. And they have to accept the notional value that Diocletian assigns to this coin. But there's a problem. So if you look at this follis that you can see from the later period of Diocletian, this is actually after Diocletian's retirement, you can see that it like those bronze coins in the 250s, is a bronze coin with a silver wash, silver coating on the outside of it. What starts happening is people realize that, yes, the silver coating will come off if the coin is handled too much, but you can also strip it off. And if you strip the silver coating off of the coin, you can melt down the silver that you've stripped off of it, and you can keep the silver and then go spend the bronze coin. And this happens so much that follises begin circulating with kind of two values. So you have the same coin with the silver being worth more than the coin where the silver has been stripped off. And that defeats the purpose of Diocletian's system. He needs a stable, recognized value for the coin. And Diocletian then makes the crucial decision to, in a sense, double down on this coin, double down on this follis, and add more silver at the expense of minting more silver coins. What you end up with is a system where the value of the follis collapses. You just simply cannot issue coins like that, coated in silver, where people strip the silver off and have a stable monetary system. And so just in the 30 years between the retirement of Diocletian in the year 305 and the death of Constantine in 337, you see what happens to the follis. It goes from a large, substantial coin, sort of like a shadowy version of a sestertius, down to basically a coin that's not much bigger than a quadrans. And the system of regular exchange between small value bronze, silver, and gold breaks down because the value of the follis is no longer stable. So across the 4th century, this is the system in theory. So in theory, in the 4th century, you have a gold coin called the solidus, you have a silver coin called a siliqua, and you have a bronze coin. And in theory, you can move in a stable fashion from that bronze coin through the silver coin to the gold coin, but in practice, you can't. In practice, the value of the follis fluctuates and generally moves downward. And so the solidus maintains its value. The silver coins become much less substantial, much less thick, than the silver coins under Diocletian, and they become much rarer. And the follis sort of proliferates. There are lots and lots and lots of them, and their value relative to the solidus collapses. Now, as these follis values decline and collapse, what we see is the mint spends less time and less energy actually creating noticeable and interesting and identifiable follises. So in the 5th century, you can see the value of the follis decline, and then ultimately you see the size of the follis decline. So on the left, just for comparison's sake, you see a nickel from the United States. In the center is a follis dated from between 395 and 401 AD. And then to the right is a follis from just 20 years later. And you can see that the follis on the right is not even half the size of the follis in the center. And the follis in the center is, of course, quite small in and of itself. So across the 5th century, what happens is the follis become so low value that people actually buy things by placing bags of them on a weight. So it didn't even matter that the follis was identifiable as a coin. In some cases, it didn't even need to have a follis in the bag for it to have value, because the thing had become so valueless that it was measured just simply in quantity. So now you have moved completely out of a system where the follis has any kind of notional value. You're back to a system where the coin's value is entirely tied to the intrinsic value of the metal inside of it. And in 498, the Emperor Anastasius decides that this is a completely unacceptable system, because what it meant effectively is there are two types of coins that circulate: very high value gold coins, and then these low value, low weight, very pathetically minted follises. And so Anastasius creates a new system, a system where you can move through the bronze coinage all the way up to the gold coinage. And so it's a system that you see laid out here. On the right, you see the lowest of the multiples of the follis. This is a 5 follis mark, or a pentanumium, and that has an E on it. The next one has an I for 10. So E is 5 in Greek numbers. I is 10. K or kappa is 20. And then the M represents 40 follises. And then on the side, you have a gold coin. But now, with the reform of Anastasius, you have now a pattern or a process or an ability to move in a regular fashion from the bronze coins all the way up to the gold coins. You now again have stability. So I just want to conclude by looking at all of the coins that we've talked about and the kind of progression that you can see from the very beginning of the imperial period all the way down through the reign of Justinian. So at the very top, what you see is the basic breakdown of the main workhorse coins of the Roman imperial period. The denarius on the upper left, the sestertius right to the right of it, the dupondius, and the os. So those are all second century examples, more or less from the reign of Hadrian and Nerva. The next row, you see these innovations in the 3rd century. So the second column the second row on the right is the Aurelianus of Aurelian, and the Antoninianus is to its left. So the Antoninianus is early 3rd century. The Aurelianus is to the later part of the 3rd century. And then the next 2 rows are those Diocletianic coins. So the top part is a Diocletianic Aurelianus from the 280s, and then you see the 2 follises from the later part of the 290s and early 300s. Below that, you can see the degeneration of the size of the follis in the reign of Constantine. So the follis under Constantine shrinks in size and shrinks in sturdiness. Below that, you see those examples from the 360s that we talked about. A solidus, that particular solidus is actually from the 420s, but it's the same size as those from the 360s. And then you see a siliqua and a follis, both from the reign of the Emperor Valens. Beneath that, you see the degeneration of the follis in the early part of the 5th century. That's the shift from 395 to around 424. And then finally, we see the establishment of this regularized structure where you can move back again from small value bronze coins all the way up to the gold coin. And so you can see here a system that was established under Augustus that functioned very well and was very stable for the better part of almost 300 years. It was predicated on this initial idea of a intrinsic value of gold, silver, and bronze that indicated the relative values of the coins. But as people became accustomed to that system, the intrinsic value mattered less than just the simple understanding that an os was equal to 4 quadrants, and a sestertius was equal to 4 osses, and a denarius was equal to 4 sestertii. People understood that even if the monetary value of the metal itself shifted. From the middle part of the 3rd century until this reform in 498, you have a chaotic kind of breaking down of that system. But the structure that's established in 498 again becomes regularized. Everyone understood what 5, 10, 20, 40 denominated bronze coins represented, and how they enabled you to trade your way up from a small value bronze coin predictably to a gold coin. And that system, more or less, remains intact with these value markers for another couple centuries. So I think when we're looking at Roman coins, what we have to understand is, first of all, these are things that are quite interesting because they work within a value structure that is well understood, with the exception really of this intermediate period in the 3rd to the 5th centuries, understood by everybody who's handling these coins. But the other thing that's really interesting and really important to emphasize is people are handling these coins. Every single one of these objects was made by a person. Not by a machine, but by a person. It was then delivered from the mint by another person. It then was distributed by a banker and then used for transactions by a whole bunch of other people. This is one of the wonderful things about Roman history. You can touch and handle and interact with these objects that people from a couple thousand years ago also created, touched, and interacted with. And so this is part of why coins fascinate me so much. And this is why in the cool Roman things section, we're going to spend a lot of time with coins because, frankly, they're cool and they're definitely Roman, and they are lots of fun to play around with.